and good evening. You are watching the Policy Times, world's first policy and development media. We as media have committed ourselves to the cause of nation building. And in every episode or program that we do since last 4 years, our objective is also to bring to you to world's and India's renowned experts who are actually on the ground working for the development on that sector and for the nation. Today is not an exception. Today I have an honor to welcome and introduce two of the leading academicians and educators who are contributing in the field of education in their whole lifetime. I want to welcome Dr. Shrihari Prakash sir, who is the President and Vice Chancellor of Sir Padampat Singhania University. And with him, I have Professor Raghuvir Singh sir, who is the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Teerthankar Mahaveer University. So I'll go to this subject before that. This is one of our 372nd event program, Global Policy Dialogue. And today we will talk on education. We all know education is the foundation of the society. Education is the foundation of the individual also. So people who get right education, it's not always with the parameter of wealth, but also that the individual develops the capacity to contribute in the society in a much different way. Now, how are we catering education post-pandemic? How are we providing education post-pandemic? And how do we balance or bring a balance between skilling and education, especially post-pandemic, is a very important subject. And there cannot be a better panel than the experts today we have to talk and share their perspectives. Before starting the session, I will request our experts to kindly introduce themselves, share their journey and achievements in life and their contribution in the field of education. Then we will start the discussion. So I will first request Professor Shrihari sir to kindly introduce yourself.
A very good evening to all of you. I am a chemical engineer from BITS Pilani and did my master's and PhD from Indian Institute of Science. Had an industrial stint with Grasim Nagda. A research experience has been in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Have been in teaching, started my career in Manipal Institute of Technology at that time, and have moved from Manipal to Pune to Mumbai and then Dehradun, and now at present I'm in Udaipur. Since 2002, you can say I have been in a leadership position. First, starting with vice principal of an engineering college affiliated to Mumbai University. And that has been my journey so far. I have been vice chancellor in 3 universities: UPES, GD Goenka University, and now Sir Padampat Singhania University. I've been a provost in MIT World Peace University, Pune. So that's in a nutshell the wide exposure I have around the last 30 odd years of experience.
Indeed. Thank you so much, sir. BITS Pilani is actually the most arable ground of entrepreneurs. I think BITS Pilani has produced more entrepreneurs than any Indian education institution, what I have heard. Then you led 2-3 important institutions like GD Goenka, you mentioned, is again a brilliant institution. UPS also a brilliant institution providing education in their own field. I'll come to Professor Raghuvir Singh sir. Sir, kindly, in your introduction.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Professor Raghuvir Singh, currently Vice Chancellor of Teerthankar Mahaveer University, Moradabad, close to Delhi. I too had a similar journey, and I'm an electrical engineer by profession, about 13 years of engineering experience in Mumbai, and then my master's in management from Mumbai University, JBIMS. And thereafter, since 1993 onwards, I've been into higher education, especially in management education, a long journey in management education. I've been in academic leadership position since 2000 onwards. Had a stint as an HOD at BITS Pilani, Yeah, you have another stint as a director in Manipal University, Jaipur. Of course, had a small stint at UPS Gurgaon campus. I was attending that campus, so probably I've been following Professor Harihar. Some of those things. And yes, the life has been quite a kind of a roller coaster. I've been enjoying this academic world for last almost 2.5 decades, and been trying to contribute in terms of really what education is. Currently, I'm engaged into transforming education in such that trying to put in holistic education in place, and we have been quite successful to a large extent in putting holistic education. And time permits, I'll discuss definitely some certain aspects of that as we go on discussing about it. Thank you.
What a coincidence. So, Professor Shrihari sir, and you had a similar journey with similar institution. And coincidentally, we are also pretty much connected with UPS, GD Goenka University, because in many of our previous programs, they have been a real contributor in terms of financial support and many other programs that we did together. So excellent to have you, sir, in this panel discussion. Now I'll enter into the subject. Now, COVID has done tremendous upheaval or transformation in the form of education that we are talking, and now digital education is pretty much in that. Skilling has become a real issue. Though we are talking about skilling since long, pre-COVID, and government has introduced Skill India mission. A lot of skill councils have been also introduced. However, and in the meantime, also the government has introduced national education policy, which has again a comprehensive framework in terms of taking all those challenges and all those missions together. So every challenge is actually a mission for the government to achieve for nation building overall. Now, a couple of questions, and I would love to have your observation on that, just to set the framework, and then I'll come to you. Number one, skilling has been in our agenda since independence. Maybe since 1990s, skilling got more focus in our academic curriculum. Then what has been our substantial achievement, and why has been there is steady growth, not transformative or massive or rapid. How can we do that? Because without skilling, we cannot bring the kind of industrialization that we're talking. Even if you talk about engineering, people say you both have engineering background. That's also pretty interesting. And then sir has a management background. So my background is also management. Now, 95% engineers are not employable. That's the research says. Now, how do we make our people employable? Why people are not yet kind of skilled that we are expecting, which is industry ready? And then how our policies can help achieve that. Now, post-pandemic, since blended learning is the new mode of education that we are going to experience, in that format, how do you see skill education take place or take shape gradually? The third important thing is that the kind of skill set required in future, next 3 to 5 years down the line, will be very much different than the kind of skill set our students are developing. Because as per the World Economic Forum, their research and reports, it says that Industry 5.0 will be an interaction between machines and human beings. So there, how are our large, human being or the youth are trained to work and interface or interact with machines? Because here now, technology and engineering is like going to be the base. It's no longer an option for yourself. On the other hand, we are talking about giving a lot of options. These are a couple of observations I have. So I'll first come, following the same sequence, I'll come to Professor Shrihari for the initial remarks.
Yeah, you have asked too many questions. Yeah. And while they look connected, I think each one has a very trivial individual answer. And then there is a collective discussion which we can go into. Yeah. First is why skilling has not transformed. See, who are we expecting to skill up the next generation? It's the previous generation, perhaps a few generations behind. Yeah. And do they have those skills that they can, because skill is by definition transferable. Do they have those skills? I think that's where the argument should end. But having said that, the generations have survived. Take for example, Professor Raghuvir Singh and my generation. I think we are almost the same generation. What kind of transformation we have seen? We used to listen to cricket commentary on a radio which only your grandfather was allowed to operate. Yeah, and today each one of your grandchildren would have a smartphone available to him, and his privacy and his this thing, he won't let you find out what he is doing on the smartphone. That's the transformation. We have seen so many changes and we have survived them all. We have upskilled ourselves to do that. And why could we do that? Is somebody going to say that when we graduated we were skilled to take care of all these changes? Absolutely no way. I mean, even as teachers, I think more than 50% of the courses we are teaching, we were not trained. We were not even aware these courses would be required. I think we are unnecessarily worried about the capacity of the human brain. Human brain will take care of the challenge. You saw during pandemic how many school teachers were trained to give an online lecture, and how quickly they all responded. Yeah, because they all wanted to do that, and that's I think. So we need to classify which skills are we talking about and which skills are being imparted. At the same time, let me also understand that this skilling seems to be only a big fad nowadays. And why has it come? I don't think we were really skilled to enter into the industry. Even coming from BITS Pilani, we had a 6-month industrial stint, which is more than any other institute in India at that time. I don't think we were really ready to enter the industry, that we would start the nitty-gritties from day one. It was the responsibility of the industry to help us transform and the industry at that time had a lot of time, anywhere between 6 months to 1 year they would take in training us. What has happened is they are now also hard pressed. They are running against time because of the changing environment. The changes are coming so fast. See, initially we saw changes every 10 years, and in the last 10 years we have seen already 4 or 5 changes which have transformed the way we were living. Is no longer the same. I mean, the things we were handling before COVID and the things we are doing during COVID are so much different, even within that short span of time. So these changes are coming very fast. The industry says, no, you give me somebody who will start doing the work from day one. That is where that skilling has come into play. Industry would pick up somebody who could be trained and train them. I think, and academic institutions, by what I told you, the equation is never going to converge. That somebody who was trained yesterday, using skills which were available day before yesterday, and he's going to train the students of today to face challenges of tomorrow. Do you ever think this equation can converge? Yeah, in any imagination. Yes, but our faculty are smart, our students are smarter, and the way things are coming up, you need some skills which are life skills, and we are losing some of those life skills which we learned slowly but steadily. Today we need to learn them very fast. We want our students to become experts in communication. I'm sure we all, Professor Raghuvir Singh will also agree, that we had so much of practice, after which we came to this stage of being able to put our thoughts quickly into words and create an argument out of it. Today, these things need to be done very fast, and that's what is going to hurt us in the long run. But yes, the students do spend the same 4 years in our institutions. So institutions can create an atmosphere where some of the life skills can be built up through different mechanisms so that they stay with the students for a long time. But even these life skills are changing with time. For example, the way employment is going to happen is changing. Today we are talking of gigs taking up projects. Yeah, the question of you're joining at a certain level and getting promoted and retiring, that storyline is slowly going to disappear. People will come up, and these gigs will bring in the so-called technological skills to the table more than other skills. But then for the gigs to work, the members of the gig should have the team skills, leadership skills, negotiation skills, all the life skills you talk about. The team members have to have, no doubt about it. But technological skills are going to be the one which industry is going to look, because industry is also now looking for a quick solution. They want to assemble the gig as quickly as possible and then take up projects and make profit. I mean, I'm not against industry making profit. Industry has to make profit. That's how progress happens. The GDP increases and nations are built, and with nations survive. Where I am coming from is, yes, the skilling part has now been squarely thrust on the academicians, because academicians and industry people never saw eye to eye on this. Academicians always were of the opinion that the time invariant knowledge is what we will give. We will build the fundamentals, we will build analytical skills, we will build thinking ability. And with this ability, learning ability is what we were all given in our education. And we use that learning ability to upskill ourselves as the challenges came. And we need to do it much quickly and much faster, and do it more effectively, because we need to bring in those employability skills into the curriculum. Professor Raghuvir Singh also is talking about holistic education, because these people are going to be leaders. Yeah, I mean, there is a Hon'ble model which is opposed to the Macaulay model. Macaulay model is more on employability. Hon'ble's model says you make a citizen out of a boy, and the boy will pick up the skills he needs and lead the civilization. So we are torn between the two. We need to create a hybrid between either a Hon'ble model or a Macaulay model. While saying this, I think it's absolutely essential, considering our population, considering the large amount of youth we have and the demographic dividend we have. We need to get our youth employed, and employed fruitfully, employed to the satisfaction, and they need to rise up in the in that hierarchy of human needs, which starts from physiological needs. Then you need love, you need satisfaction, then you reach the level where you are looking for spiritual goals. And since society has become rich, there is a certain level of certain fraction of society who is at each fraction is at different level, and we need to take care of problems at every level, and particularly the professional education. Professionals are what? Professionals are essentially problem solvers for the society. Otherwise, why would you call them professionals? And because they solve the problems of the society, they are looked after well by the society. They make a fat paycheck. They make a lot of money. They also have a fame and a name in the society. This is where I'm coming from, that these problems will have to be solved, and they need skills. and skills to be imparted. You need to classify those who are looking just for employment, those who are looking to be the leaders in their profession, and those who just need to survive. And those who need to survive in today's world, if they're only going to go by employable skills, I'm sure they will realize they will need to renew those employable skills probably every 2 years. Because they are going to change because of the change in technology. And you yourself said Industry 4. Industry 4 has just arrived. We are looking at Industry 4. We are looking it in the eye. And we are already talking about what will be Industry 5.0. Yeah. When first industrial revolution happened, they thought this is the transformed civilization. Is nothing more will happen. When IBM made a computer, they said 2 computers should be more than sufficient to handle all the data of the world. And today, in every individual machine we hold in our hands has more computing power, more data storage than that first IBM machine. And I think that is where we are stuck. And this is going to be a perpetual journey of reinventing ourselves the way my generation has particularly done. I would say, in fact, even our parents' generation, they have done much more than our generation of rediscovering, reinventing ourselves. And this is going to be a perpetual journey, if you ask me. And that balance between skills or knowledge is something which we will continue to answer. Maybe some of the institutions will become more focused on skills, and some of the institutions which will then create leaders which will also focus on creating the holistic human beings with all the universal values embedded in them, because mankind needs those leaders, and they define which direction we go. Yeah, the same knowledge can be a boon in the hands of somebody and a disaster in somebody else's hands. Something like a nuclear weapon, nuclear technology can be used to create electricity and make life easy for so many people, or destroy nations together. I think that is where I come from. I don't want to hog time. Let's hear Professor Raghuvir Singh. I'm sure he has a very interesting take, very different from what I'm talking about, and then we will converge.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. So coming to Professor Raghuvir Singh, sir, your observations.
Thank you. It's nice to hear Professor Shrihari and seeing his tone. I think what is being hyped around is the word skill, which is already pointed out so softly. I probably maybe a little harsh on that, so excuse me for that. But he has very well said that skills as such. Let me be very, honest in my opinion. That's, in my mind, it's more of a narrative which has been set by interested people. See, when you look at your topic, say the balance between education and skill, probably wouldn't have come that way, because when you say education, skill has to be part of it. Skill is not different from education, because when you go deeper into the word education meaning, So a long time back, Einstein defined this word education. He said that education is something which you have forgotten. After education is something which you have after you have forgotten everything which you wrote in the exams and learned in the school. Now, what is that we learn in the school? All that, words, statements, and rote learning, all that. So what is left with us is something which we did in this school and college. Whether in the lab or outside the classroom or wherever, If today somebody asks all of us, what do you remember of what we studied in schools and colleges? Probably won't be able to say. All that which we did. So the skill is also a part of the education. Unfortunately, as rightly pointed out, Mahaveer model actually emphasizes on 3 R's. Right? Read, write, arithmetic. Because that is what they needed at that point of time. That was need of the hour there. But we as a nation has never moved beyond that. Degree is supposed to have been the offshoot or a byproduct of learning or education. Unfortunately, education became byproduct of degree. Today, everyone, even today, everyone talks about degree. Everyone talks about, marks, percentages. No one talk about learning. Not even we as a teacher. Actually, we all have forgotten the word learning. We all have been talking about teaching. Further, somebody said so beautifully, he said, something worth learning cannot be taught. Something worth learning cannot be taught. So you cannot teach anybody worth learning. What you can teach is concepts and what all text is around. But all that remaining, everything has to be learned by the student himself. So when I deep dive into education, I look at, see, as a human, whole person, if you look at, we have had heart and hands. Isn't it? So the education must be the one which actually develops all the 3 aspects of human. But unfortunately, over a period of time, our degrees have been manufactured in such a way or been compiled together in such a way that a person needs a small portion of it, not a full, small portion of it to retain or remember that specific content which is required. So if you look at degrees have become so narrow, so focused, so regimented that the holistic development doesn't happen during those days of learning. It's, as rightly pointed out by Professor Honwad, it is what we actually learn over a period of time. He mentioned about BITS Pilani, where, the best system in the country where people go through a whole semester into the corporate, even they don't become employable. So this saying our engineers are not employable is a misnomer. Probably all those people who are trying to point out this may not understand or might have their own agenda to set before us that they are not employable. Now, question is, what is that you are expecting in employability? Let's decide that. You go to a seminar, you keep hearing education or institutions or universities are not developing what we want. No, they will not develop what you want. They are not for you. We cannot do that. We are not supposed to do that. We can't prepare students which are so-called industry ready. Industry, as pointed out by Professor, today the change is so fast that if you try to make our students learn those tools, techniques of the industry today, by the time they pass out, that will be redundant. So why should I teach or make them learn a tool and a technique? Something which is going to be redundant so fast. So then what is that our role as educationists? We go to, understand and accept that our role has to change. There is no doubt about that the way we are today dealing with education has to undergo change. The most important aspect in my mind is developing what we call is critical thinking. Make a student an independent thinker on anything and everything. Let him have his own opinion by the end of the year. Let him have his own thought process developed, rather than having those few tools and techniques. All right. Now, if you do that, you'll find that the student will be a very, very fast learner. He would go on learning independently throughout his life. So today, what, fortunately or unfortunately, pandemic has put into such a place where we are discussing education today. Tell me, Professor Shrihari, how many times before pandemic we ever discuss education? Never we discussed education. So let's thank pandemic that I can say by my own, like I must have for last 1.5 years spoken more than 100 times on education. Prior to that, in entire journey of mine, more than 2 decades, never ever spoken on education. Never ever was discussed. Education was never discussed. So when I look at my education, I got to restructure, redesign the way I deliver, or rather way I think about education. See, the way our degrees are, developed, they are so narrowly subject oriented. But is there real life anything called subject oriented? No, not at all. So our degrees, I keep telling you, our degrees have to be a bespoke degrees. That means it has to be something like, a cafeteria where an individual can go and pick the choices. So as the degree also have to be. Let a student construct his degree depending upon what is his best area. Unfortunately, even PhD is in subject oriented. How can a PhD be on a subject? The so-called professors of past, I don't want to name specific universities, but there are, that how can you do this outside the subject? You cannot do this. Then what is your so-called interdisciplinary approach? One way you say interdisciplinary, another way, no, you can't go beyond this subject. You can't do your PhD in that particular department or this particular department. There are major issues. See, if I want to do it, of course, when I did, no one ever said all these words. But today, when my student comes, I do tell me what is that you want to do. Forget about department and discipline. What problem you want to solve? And to solve that problem, what knowledge do you need? What skills do you need? You talk about that, and we'll put together your degree. And that's what the future should look like. No, so broadly, if I look at over and above those critical thinking aspects, that means one's ability to, engage himself at a higher level of thinking. That means the ability to use and process the knowledge, in terms of analyzing, evaluating, and, creating something new. If that aspect is developed, and then I said broadly, there are 3 important skills in management, we call it. That's a human skill, technical skills, and conceptual skills. All these 3 skills are most important wherever you go. And these skills, you'll know that would change depending upon your level of job. How much one is required will depend upon what level are you. So if you are a top guy, your conceptual skills have to be very strong. There you don't need high technical, but if you are an entry level, your technical skills has to be very good, then other skills. Now, the contents of these skills will vary as we proceed in our life. The specific tools, techniques, which we call in a technical skills, will vary up to 10 years. What is today relevant will not be relevant in 10 years. So what we call asynchronous learning or hybrid learning is such an important technology, which, methods of learning with the help of technology has emerged. The individuals in the corporate would learn themselves, or there's a corporate which is trying to help. Today, your immersion technology helps you not to disturb your production lines and still train your people. So that has become so important. Even that technology is entering into universities. But as of now, the cost is very, very prohibitive. So at the end, let me tell you and share with everyone, every university or any higher education institution has to have its why very clear. Why means, why are they giving education? That is, one's purpose has to be very clear. In my mind, there are 3 important purposes which any university is supposed to have. The first purpose is knowledge dissemination. Second is knowledge creation. Third one is employability and entrepreneurship. There are, say, universities like us, private universities, cannot afford to be a knowledge creators And we cannot compete at knowledge dissemination space because government universities provide you at such a low abysmal cost where we cannot step into. So our most important domain is left is employability and entrepreneurship. But the major question, which I frankly accept, which I've been discussing with my faculty and management, is that if that is our space, what are we doing about it? Unfortunately. So if that's my space, I put it on a continuum on employability, how much time and efforts and investment I make on creating employability has to completely undergo change. I want to be an employability university, but still my focus, and unfortunately, on knowledge dissemination. So I got to reorient myself as a university, which of course we are doing right now, trying to put in more efforts, energy, and investment on creating employability. And when we create employability, I looked at those three important domains of learning. That is your cognitive level, affective level, and psychomotor skills. We have, over a period of time, taken about 2 years for us to define each component elaborately. Now, when I look at the cognitive aspect, what is going on today? So as I mentioned earlier, we need to make our students to think independently. That means develop them higher order thinking. But what is actually happening at the class level, in the classroom? Most of it is on the low level. That is on imparting knowledge. That means even we are not able to develop that cognitive aspect of this. So greater focus has to be there on higher order thinking. Okay, that will change if we start talking about, if we start training our people. So a new thinking has to emerge in education. But my ultimate take is skill is not separate from education. It is an ingrained part of education. If there is an education, there has to be a skill. Go back to our old system of gurukuls. There was nothing like skill section and education section. It was there. Right? That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, very illuminating and completely different point of view from the traditional approach that we often talk. So pretty interesting actually to know. Now I'll come to the final portion of it. So I'll come back to Professor Shrihari, sir, for your final closing remarks. And in addition to the closing remarks, again, I will have 2-3 questions to club with that. What in the closing remark basically is, what is your message for policymakers? What is your message for policy educators? And what is your message for students and guardians? Because they are also important, integral part of the entire education ecosystem. In addition to that, my question this is the era of disruption. So and Professor Raghuvir Singh has slightly touched upon this issue, that how we prepare ourselves to face them. So every 3 years, everything will change, whether it is the banking system, whether it is the business profession, gig economy we're talking about. We don't know what gig economy will emerge 5 years down the line. What will be the actual nature of today? We are absolutely 100% work from home. I don't know what is the future of my model of work 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. We will not die. We will just transform. Now, what is that transformation? Now, here is the question, that how do we prepare ourselves to adapt the disruption? All are surviving. Surviving is a different ball game. Leading is another ball game. There I come now is the most important part. Next 30 to 50 years belongs to India. Now we say that, but I don't know how again the world will transform. If next 30 years belong to India, how can India leverage this? And the leverage has to come from proper education, the world-class education and world-class skilling system, because we have to attract a lot of FDI investment. We have to restart the manufacturing wheel. If we really want to be the global manufacturing hub, then the entire ball game is different. So how our education system and skilling mechanism support us becoming the next global power center of the world? Because the game is here not surviving. The game is here leading. You have to lead the world. So how do we do that? What are the strengths that we have, and how education system can play the role? in addition to your message.
Yeah. Let me start with what happens next 30 years. Next 30 years, a lot of things may happen. Universities, as we know them, may not really be the universities where everybody will come. Okay. So having said that, let me not go into defining what could happen to the universities. Let me come back and let me first be very clear. Everything Professor Raghuvir Singh has said, I agree with him. Practically all the major points, I'm sure I will agree with him, and would have preferred to add a few things to what he already said. And it's very interesting that even I always think of the Gurukul model for education, where every child was given a he talked about bespoke education. Bespoke education is a designer education, and then while they all studied together, they all came out with different skill sets and different levels of degrees, and although they all spent practically the same amount of time in the gurukuls. We need to start moving together. The new education policy does have many such barriers to education being removed. One of them was age. Second was the stream, mobility across streams. Even AICT has come out and has tried to, allow some mobility across streams. They're trying to say if a student does not have physics, mathematics, he can be given bridge courses, because all the difference is it's a 2 years of physics and 2 years of mathematics, which he has done. 2 years of physics and mathematics, which any other student who is coming into engineering has done, for example. We are trying to upgrade a BSc program into an employability program, and now we are stuck with an engineering program where there is a lot more of a, focused fundamental learning compared to a BSc program, because we strengthened our engineering program and we did not strengthen the BSc program accordingly. I mean, both could be equally strong programs, even on fundamentals. But having said that, now that we are trying to boost a BSc program, we also need to remodel our engineering program, in which, for example, the controlling the regulators should change from regulators to facilitators. I think regulation is not what is required for education in India. In India, what is required is facilitation. AICT has come up with a scheme of margdarshaks. But who are these margdarshaks? Are they going to help institutions learn how to be obedient to AICT, or are they acting as a two-way stream between AICT and the institutions? Because new ideas can come from anywhere. Neither AICT nor the IITs have the a right to think correctly, and everybody else thinks wrongly. I mean, innovative ideas can come from anywhere, any institution, even a private one. And I have myself seen so many of these institutions. I've been talking to so many vice chancellors. Each one has a wonderful model which is trying out, experimenting. And it's the universities, it's the private universities who have this guts to go ahead and experiment with educational models, be it MIT Pune, where they're bringing in value system, and I'm sure Professor Raghuvir Singh also is talking about a wholesome model. We also need to transform the way we are teaching. In most of our institutions, we need to move towards outcome based rather than which was content based. We have to cover these contents. We have to complete the syllabus. I mean, there's nothing like complete the syllabus. Once you define that this is the outcome expected from the syllabus, once that outcome is achieved, you don't have to complete the syllabus. Student will go ahead and complete the syllabus. He will define what syllabus he wants to complete. I think that is the transformation we need to have about. And the third thing is the generations which are coming up. Let's accept they are much smarter than us. They have had a very different kind of an upbringing. I mean, when we were to choose a career, we had 2 or 3 options, and that too we also followed, like, quite often like sheep, somebody else whom we modeled, and then because everybody went to engineering, we all went to engineering. I think that's not going to happen anymore. Students will choose the right kind of a life for themselves, and they will lead a right way of life by themselves. And believe me, it is these newer generations that are making these changes. Industry 5.0 is not going to be brought about by Professor Raghuvir Singh and me. It's going to be brought out by students who are in the colleges, probably who are still in the schools now today. And these are smart children. And I must say, with all this, negativity about education, our students are doing well. I'm sure they will continue to do well. Human brain trains itself, and we have enough good teachers and good institutions where they get trained and good opportunities. And a lot of our students are going to be trained outside the education institutions, because there is going to be an the GER we are looking at, graduate enrollment ratio we are looking at, is impossible with the kind of heavyweight systems we have today. These will have to be very flexible, very open. That's why the government is talking about various things as mobility and credit, banking, and so on and so forth. Bring in flexibility is what everybody is talking about. I'm sure that flexibility will help people strike that balance, because now we don't know what kind of times will come tomorrow. Today, the current generation is ready to pay for the education of the next generation. In many countries, this thing is already has evaporated. This system has already evaporated. The next generation borrows money from their next generation so that they can be educated, and they repay back to the generation down the line. I think that is going to be one big game changer, to bring in everybody into this mode of wanting to skill himself. We are all looking for jobs. We are not looking for jobs. We are looking for salaries. Come on. Employability to us means salaries. Every society of a particular size will need those many professionals who need to support it in that fashion. So jobs are available, salaries are not. People need to recognize that. People need to identify what skills I want to build, and accordingly build it. And there has to be a core base education where they will come back, dip into and pick up the fundamentals required, and go back, add skills if you want to separate this thing, because it's all education after all. I'm just changing them from fundamentals and skills, not just application, but beyond that. Skills are, sometimes blind in terms of, you only understand what input gives you what output. It's like a artificial intelligence training of the mind. For example, today the skill required in computer science is your ability to program in a particular language, and 2 years down the line, that language will change, because new language would be in its place. And again, whoever is in that business will have to relearn that, and they all learn it as input-output correlations, and they don't really go into the making of the language. So they will not be writing any novels in that language. They will just be using it to do mundane activities. Coding skills is what we, and these are the kinds of skills people will have to pick up. Government has to step aside. government has to facilitate, stop regulating. This whole concept of government recognized degrees, I have a feeling if we continue to hold on to this, will be left with no meaning. Look at how people have responded. Look at the IT revolution in India, so-called first IT revolution in India. They picked up from every nook and corner. They picked up mechanical engineers. They picked up, electrical engineers. Many of them, they just had their logical, trained minds in place. They taught them coding and captured the market. And finally, when they became too big, the whole IT industry got Bangalore. I think people are smart enough to take care of themselves. The leaders are smart enough to convert opportunities. Leaders have to be given that freedom to look for the opportunity and convert them. Quite often, I mean, imagine if we had a rule which said IT industry can only employ people with BTech computer science engineering. What would have happened to the Y2K problem? Y2K problem was solved by everybody who became an IT engineer, so-called IT. I'm sure that such things will also happen in future, and people will recognize that. And as Professor Raghuvir Singh said, bespoke degrees. I would say, let's stop calling it degrees, because degree again, is in a formal setup. It will be bespoke bouquet of credits, which each of our youngsters will come out with in the market, and they will use that bouquet to become parts of teams which will do projects for the society. I think that process needs to be facilitated and not regulated.
Thank you.
I think that is where I'm coming from.
I think excellent, outstanding points. If I could give you more time, I think more such ideas could have come out. So, but because of the positive time,
we are professors. We. I heard Professor Inder Sen, ex-director of IIT Madras, once. He says, "We are professors. You give us time, we will come with 1,000 ideas which will not work." So that's where we are.
Very true.
But then by churning of ideas, I'm sure we will reach to a model which will work and which can be made to work.
Indeed. Let us have the last word from Professor Raghuvir Singh.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Shrihari. Very interesting, Ali, you have put in. Let's keep the government away. Very interesting idea. But look at the contrast. Look at the contrast. See, we have that habit of subjugating ourselves to others. We haven't come out of that British era. I still feel like subjugating. It's a very interesting thing I'll tell you. What's happening in the country? Like, every university say that we are recognized or we are approved by university. I actually got tired of telling people, Baba, there is no word called approval and recognition in the entire act of UGC. So where is the question of approval and recognition? So forget about the people who are regulators. I'm talking about we all. We all every day hear and use this word. So let's get away from that first. Our mindset should be away. Then only we can expect what government will do for us. Right? So you are so rightly pointed out. Regulators must act as facilitators. Give a very, depth in, just give 2 minutes. This is to the level where a regulator can go. We are a multidisciplinary university, both medical, non-medical, and all those programs. Just take one aspect of pharmacy education. The regulator has defined your entire courses to be taught, that is subjects, the contents to be taught, the books to be referred, the number of tests to be conducted, number of questions to be there, whether long question, short question, how many marks question, and what pass marks should be there. Oh, Baba. So then what is left with the teacher and the university? One aspect you talk about autonomy of a university, autonomy of a teacher. On another aspect, you change both. How do you remove this dichotomy? Now, my suggestion to these so-called regulators is, why don't you do a job which is quite challenging? This is the easiest thing to do. Easiest thing to do. Ask every institution in the country to follow you like a nut. They will follow. So I ask you, why don't you connect us to the global institutions so that we can learn from them? Why don't you connect us to the industry? Why did you train our faculty on education domain? I don't know. There is a silence out there on the opposite because it's like being an electrical engineer. I'm always reminded of current. Current takes the easiest path. So it is easiest to regulate than to do anything else. So if the change has to come, I recommend there are 4 levels at where the change has come. The first important thing is the government, it has to come. Right? Second important thing, it has to come at the level of the educators. Third is the parents, and fourth on the student. Because when it comes to learning, without student, there's no learning. Parents have to stop putting pressure on them. They are trying to make their children what they couldn't be. This is little unexpected and desirable. They want to see themselves through them. Right. So I tell you very interestingly, a decade back, my son told me, Dad, I don't want to do it. I told him to do engineering because you ask me anything else, I won't do engineering. I said, fair enough. Do engineering, but request you actually don't leave mathematics because mathematics develops your critical abilities. It's a different level. I said, okay, आपने मेरी बात मानी, मैं आपकी बात मान लेता हूँ. And he's quite successful today. Right. So let the child's will prevail. Right. Parents have to now move away from, as I said, degree, marks. कोई भी बच्चा अगर 60% ले आया, kind of comments parents make here. It's so horrible. Percentage has got nothing to do with success in life. Success is a long journey. You never know, somebody who's failed 10 times every course would succeed at the best level. How do we relate success, marks and degrees? That mindset has to change from parents. We as an educators have to spend more time on understanding education as such. Unfortunately, our education domain is very poor. We are great in our own domain knowledge, area, skill, etc., etc. But education domain, no. Still, we actually construct our curriculum based upon somebody else's curriculum. We don't think afresh. Right? It has to be, as you mentioned, outcome based. See, I know it is very tough. I know. For last 2 years, I must have gone through more than 125 programs, outcomes, determination, and more than 3,000 courses determined. Every word has gone through that. Every word has gone through. Because to change my faculty, somehow it was not happening. They were understanding in workshops, but when they were actually penning it down, the sense was emerging something else. So very, very difficult. Let me tell you, it is a Herculean task. Government has to.
It's a paradigm, sir. It's a paradigm you can't.
Yeah, it is a paradigm. It's a complete, think shift. Complete. So it's not easy to grasp for anybody and everybody, right? So government has to now stop doing they start doing what they've been saying for long, 6% of GDP in education. Bina investment ke kuch nahi hota, sir, to be very frank. Right? And fortunately, it's almost 60% higher education is delivered by private efforts. Contribute there also. They're also contributing to the nation building.
Absolutely.
Right. So unless that is done, nothing much can change. Then, of course, technology, it's going to be the focus, mainstay. So every student, faculty, everyone has to have a good hand at technology. Without technology, it cannot go. Like anything you want to do in life today it's a technology driven. So whether it's an engineer or a non-engineer, this gap of engineer, no-engineer has to, I think over a period of time it will go away in my mind. It is bound to fail. Right. So all of us, all students have to learn to adapt at technology because that's what is going to be there. And finally, I would say government must contribute in providing exposure to the students. Industry has to come to them. People talk at seminars that, yeah, we are ready to work, but when you talk to them, take our students for internship for 1 month or 2 months, they're not forthcoming. And if they are forthcoming, nobody bothers about those students. Nobody bothers. I have an experience of not only now, in the past. We were lucky in being a BITSians as a faculty in charge, where a faculty used to accompany the students. There used to be off-campus faculty, right? The BITS used to pay them. They used to assure that these students have a complete plan of 6 months or a 2 months training, and they interact at various levels and various people they are assessed. This is not the case with other institutions. Under obligation, an institution, industry would take, say, 500 students as their, summer trainees, but don't bother about what they are doing. This defeats the entire purpose of education. So there are a lot of mind shift has to happen if education to be of relevance to the future. Okay, and all of us to be together in this, the government, the educators, the parents, students, and industry. All these pillars, if they are come together, make a very strong foundation. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Raghuvir Singh, Professor Shrihari, sir. Wonderful hearing your perspectives. I think the point, there are a lot of takeaways from the whole discussion, but the concept I like that, we don't need to give degrees. I think this is time now to give a bouquet of credentials. Here are the works you have done, and I think more than that, if you can give a certificate of innovation, say, okay, this is the boy who has innovated this, and this is the certificate for innovation or achievement, outstanding, achievement.
First, give it to the universities which will be permitted to do these things. Yeah, we have rules which are very, very tricky. Universities which are NAC A grade are allowed to get into engagement with universities abroad. Why? They don't need that. The universities who could not get accredited, who need support.
Professor Srihari, since you have spoken about this NAC, let me tell you, when the new manual of NAC came in 2018, I was so happy about it. I thought, yeah, here there's something they talk about outcomes.
Yes.
But so painful to learn, a new business area has emerged because of the NAC. I don't want to point out on a public platform, but it's a trash, let me tell you. It's a trash.
Oh, yes. I agree with you, sir.
It's so painful to learn.
Anything you define the system, we are very clever how to beat it.
I think people might have defined it knowingly that.
We are really short of time, sir. I'm really sorry. We have already crossed 10 minutes, but what I feel that, we need little more freedom and flexibility in the higher education. The point that Professor Raghuvir Singh said, and I totally agree, is that let us have at least 10% GDP contribution to education or budget contribution to education. I totally agree with the point. Sir said 6%, I say 10%. Because a lot of foreign countries like United States or a lot of European countries, even China does more than 6%. So without that, we cannot expect anything. The second point I like the most, in fact, is that 60% of the higher education has been delivered by private institutions, where there is absolutely
much more than that.
Most of them. And absolutely no incentives or support of the, I think, policymakers, whether it is from center or state, in terms of running those. My first point was on that is that 60% or a lot of seats go vacant in the private institutions. I strongly feel, Policy Times strongly feels that every seat that goes empty is a national loss. Hence, the government has to take this very seriously if they really want to increase the gross enrollment ratio. Because if 60% is done by the private institutions, it is also government's job to increase the enrollment in the private institutions. What kind of effort can be taken at the policy making level so that not even a single seat goes empty, whether they are private or government? If the parents are not able to pay, the government should be able to pay or compensate the institutions, but the seat should not go empty. It should not be considered as a business proposition. So that's the actually recommendation that we have also been talking. So with this, a lot of point I'll not repeat. So viewers, if you like the discussion like this, do subscribe and watch the Policy Times. We, as promised, will bring the real experts who are working on the ground in different perspectives to share their perspective so that we all collectively together achieve for the nation. Thank you. Keep watching.